Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And much like I had predicted, much like they had said, there are changes happening to both PvE and PvP with some very big implications. Big ups for some classes, big downs for other classes, and some classes just totally didn't get anything, which came as a big surprise on my first glance of these changes, but there's a lot, so let's get started. For Death Knights, your Sand Lane hero tree is getting buffed, okay? Vampiric Strike chance to trigger is increased to 25% up from 10. Frenzied Bloodthirst damage of Death Cool and Death Strike increased by 5% per stack up from 4. And Visceral Strength will grant you 8% strength up from 6. And they fixed an issue with Visceral Strength modifying base strength instead of total strength. Now, do remember that they're trying to balance hero talent trees against specs as well. In the PvP specific changes, when we get to them, you'll see that there was nerfs to the Riders of Apocalypse, and it's already possible that Sand Lane could have been a competitive option even despite the nerfs that came through, but these are very big buffs for them. For Blood specifically, Vampiric Strike is also getting an additional 20% damage, and for Infliction of Sorrows, it's going to deal 15% of the remaining damage over time, up from 10. So Blood DK is very happy with Sand Lane changes, I would imagine. Demon Hunter, I at first thought that you didn't get any changes, but then realized that these bug fixes are absolutely massive. They fixed an issue that caused I-Beam's damage to be reduced beyond one target instead of 5. So I-Beam was doing less damage if there was 2 things next to it. So that's a big buff. Fixed an issue that prevented I-Beam from benefiting from Isolated Prey's damage bonus, which is also if you hit it with 1 target. And then also fixed an issue that prevented I-Beam from benefiting from Chaotic Disposition's damage bonus. So a huge bunch of modifiers on I-Beam. They're going to be, I can't remember the name of the hero from Marvel now with the laser eyes with the goggles, but Demon Hunter might be that dude right now. Boomkins. The changes they made were very in line with what I thought. Just overall, 6% damage increase, Star Surge getting a 16% damage increase, and Starfall getting a 20% increase, but only in PvE. Starfall was already good enough in PvP, so I think this makes sense to not do it, for PvP. Elun's Chosen Lunar Calling increases Starfire's damage to its primary target by 80, up from 65. So they rolled back some of the Starfire nerfs for PvE, but for some reason didn't roll them back in PvP at all. I would have liked to see it roll back a little bit, because the Starfire build it's nice to have a hard casting build. Not a lot of classes in the game cast anymore, and it just doesn't feel rewarding at all with how much damage it currently does. So I would even rolling it back by 5% or something like that in PvP would have been nice for this one, but definitely the single target builds are getting a little bit better here for Boomkin. Feral Druid copped a huge amount of buffs that I was not expecting that are all coming through for PvP as well. Although Blood Talons and Lion Strength now no longer also increase the damage of Rampant Ferocity. Developers note, in response to feedback that this change reduced the value of maintaining RIP and complicated using Blood Talons and AoE, we are reverting the change. So this is really good that they're being responsive to feedback. I think they're also being responsive to the Delve changes they made this morning, because everybody's like, what is going on? This is too much. So they're doing some reversions on that. But you're getting a 3% damage buff, 3% guys back. You're getting a 6% RIP damage buff on top of that, additional 3% Ferocious Bite, and a 10% Feral Frenzy buff. And Druid of the Claw got a 3% Ravage damage increase. I don't know if that's enough for you to switch from Wildstalker at the moment, but the 10% Feral Frenzy is definitely an increase. Feral is doing really well, so I'm also kind of surprised by this, but you know what, Feral Druids, you guys haven't been really strong in a while. I don't think you're maybe super over the top, so maybe it's totally fine. Resto Druid got an 8% healing increase, but not in PvP. They don't like you guys. They don't want you getting a healing buff. Wrath damage, though, got a 20% buff. Starfire got a 20% buff. And Star Surge got a 20% buff. The Starfire in PvE, I'm assuming Starfire AoEs as Resto, is probably the only one that really matters. I don't know if you even take Star Surge in a lot of PvP situations. Or do you just get Star Surge baseline now? I don't even know. I need to try and do some pushing on Resto Druid, but overall, not too big of a deal, I think, for Resto. 10% Disintegrate buff for Evoker. I don't think Dev or Preservation needed that, but I think it's counteracted in the PvP changes, so we'll get to it in a moment. This definitely didn't need to come through. Eternity Surge damage buff by 10% for Devastation. Devastation is doing really well right now, so it's very surprising to see any of their abilities getting buffed, especially considering they hit so hard with all of them. Fire Mages, I don't know if this is enough to bring you guys back from the dead, but a lot of people were really upset about this change. The Living Bomb's explosion visual now only plays on the unit that is the Living Bomb, rather than each unit damaged by its explosion. people were very upset about the visual changes on this. I don't know honestly how big of a deal it is, but when I was on Reddit, they seem to be really mad about the visual changes. People care more about the visuals than their actual power. Arcane got some Sun Fury nerfs, which is kind of sad because Arcane Sun Fury was already kind of bad in PvP. Your meteorite damage reduced by 15%, burden of power damage bonus to Arcane Blast reduced to 20 from 30, and burden of power damage bonus for Arcane Barrage reduced to 20 from 30. So you're almost, I think you're going to be going Spellslinger after that. Maybe I'm actually mixing up Sun Fury for a different spec. I don't know. But I think Spellslinger is looking a lot better with those. Fire Mage, they gutted Living Bomb. Like, I think they nerfed it by like 1,000% or something before. And now rewinding that by 25 is not going to do much. The 6% on all your other abilities, it's nice, but I still don't know if it's enough, at least in PvP. Mistweaver, you're getting a 3% healing buff. And you're going to like it. Tiger Palm, damage increased by 15%, but not in PvP, so they're a bit worried about Fistweaver. They're very worried about Mistweaver and BGs, it seems like, and that's what this is, I think, likely aimed at. Rising Sun Kick also getting a 15% damage increase, but not in PvP. Yeah, it's not your AoE abilities, so I don't even know how big of a deal that'll be in PvE, but on single target, it will matter a bit. For Windwalker, Darting Hurricane's passive trigger rate reduced by 50%, and now reduces the global cooldown by only 0.25, down from 0.5. So I think this is explained to me that this is like the Tiger Palm global cooldown. So you're going to lose a little bit of like fluidity in terms of your global cooldowns. I don't know how big of a deal this is in PvE, but in PvP, obviously like global cooldown can feel a little bit draggy. So it's likely going to be felt at least a bit. For Holy Paladin, 6% healing nerf, but not in PvP. You're getting a 60% judgment damage buff, 60% Crusader Strike, and 20% Hammer of Wrath buff. Those will definitely be felt, I think, in PvP, unless these abilities are just doing no damage, but 60% seems like a pretty significant number. However, Avenging Crusader is absolutely dead in PvP if it wasn't dead already, but now they're really trying to go after the spec in PvE, I guess. It's only going to transfer 260% of the damage down from 420. Man, that number was so nice. Why I gotta do that? Holy Prism single target damage increased by 100%, and area of effect damage increased by 50%. So Holy Prism is going to be doing a little bit more effective damage. For Retribution Paladins, you get copping a nerf here. Herald of the Sun, Dawnlight damage reduced by 15%, and to my understanding, this is Wake of Ashes. So your Wake of Ashes dot is going to do a little bit less. That's obviously directed at PvE, but will also be happening in PvP, as it's not noted that it won't. Shadow Priest, you're getting a 6% damage buff, smiley face. However, Psychic Link is now only going to inflict 25% of its direct damage to targets affected by VT, down from 30. So, you know, outside of Mind Blast, your damage is higher, but during the Mind Blast is a little lower. So it's hard. I feel like this is probably just like net neutral. Outlaw Rogue, you know, I was looking at the PvE charts in that prediction video, and they did get a nerf. Just 4% reduction on all abilities. Auto attack damage reduced by 8%. Dispatch damage reduced by 10%. Your set bonus, though, looks like it's getting buffed. Your 2 set now grants listed abilities a 35% chance to deal 30% increased shadow damage, up from 20 and 15%. So because Outlaw gets shadow damage on its set bonuses, I actually kind of wonder how it's going to affect its viability in PvP. Because the fact that it does only physical damage actually limits it quite a bit in a lot of cases. So this could, and I think it was actually performing pretty well. I think people are sleeping on Outlaw. I actually think it's really good at the moment. The War Within, at least in PvP, the War Within Season 1 4-set bonus for Between the Eyes increased to 15% damage per stack up to 4 stacks. It was 6%. Okay, so they nerfed your abilities, but these set bonus changes, when Outlaw Rogue gets their 4-piece, could be really crazy in PvP. That could be really strong. Enhancement Shamans, 4% damage buff. However, Witch Doctor's Ancestry is now only going to reduce the cooldown of Feral Spirit by 1 second whenever you gain Maelstrom Weapon, down from 2. So you're not going to have the Infinity Wolves. Remember, you're getting a rework in 11.0.5, and there's a passive talent that summons wolves, and I know I was getting a lot of them, so maybe that won't matter too much in the future. Your set bonus is also getting buffed. You're going to get 4% more damage on Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Ice Strike, and Crash Lightning. So overall, some gameplay changes here, which I think Enhanced Shamans are upset about, but at 11.0.5, I think you're going to totally forget this change. Meanwhile, you're just getting some number buffs. And do remember, these are just the PvE changes that also affect PvP. They've still got PvP to cover. Resto Shaman, you're getting a damage buff. Lava Burst 12%, Lightning Bolt 12%, Chain Lightning 12%. Luckily trying to up your damage in PvE to compete with the most competitive healers, because damage output for healers generally is still, I think, one of the most desirable things. I'm excited for the Lava Burst one. Demo Locks, you guys needed some help, so what are you getting here? 20% Demon Bolt damage, that's good. And your summoned Doom Guards are getting 45% more damage, and your Fel Guard is getting 15% more damage. Good changes for Demo. Destruction, 6% damage increase. And your Dimensional Rift is getting a 40% damage increase. I wonder if you play the Incinerate build in BGs and summon Rifts. That was a build I wanted to try, and then it got like pre-nerfed like twice. I never got to try it. Bit curious. And Channel Demon Fire got a 40% increase. I don't know if this is enough for Demon Fire, but it's definitely piquing my interest on Dimensional Rift. Curious to see what the PvP changes are for Destro on top of this as well. Warrior, Colossus, Mountain of Muscles and Scars increases damage dealt by 5% up from 4. And damage dealt by Demolishes 2 initial strikes is increased by 20%. So Demolish, they're really trying to get, Slayer and Colossus a little more balanced out. And Demolish was not hitting it. It's hard for like this fact that you got to like be stationary for it and channel it and all this stuff. And it's such a cool ability. So definitely needed some damage put into it. I think that's good. Mountain Thing, Thunderblast, Lightning Strikes, and Ground Current damage also getting buffed by 6%. I don't know if this is enough for PvP. Mountain Thing's in this position where it's probably strong in PvE, and then so it'll never get buffed, but it's bad in PvP because it's just about pad little tiny AoE hits, which is just not very good in PvP. Blade Storm damage nerf for Arms Warrior. That's surprising. I didn't think Arms Warrior needed a nerf. PvE or PvP. Arms Warriors are sad today. Fury Warrior, not surprising. 10% Blade Storm nerf. Another 15% on Odin's Fury. They nerfed it before as well. Mountain Thane, though, got buffed. Strength of Mountain Thane increases Bloodthirst and Rampage damage by 20, up from 15. I don't know if this is not enough to compete, but Odin's Fury, this could start compounding here. This is a lot of 15%, on this. So Fury Warrior, definitely going to feel that. I got to get my Fury Warriors Elite set before reset. Death Knight. Oh no, Death Knight, what's going on with you guys? Frost Fever damage is no longer increased in PvP. It was by 25%. So they don't like the AoE dots. Frost DK is indirectly getting nerfed from this as a result, which is sad for them. And also the Icon of Lesser Anti-Magic Shells and Vestigial Shell. I always feel dirty saying vestigial. I'm not saying that. It rhymes with another word that has been updated to be distinct. So you'll be able to tell which type of shield it is. Okay. But Rider of the Apocalypse, Horseman's 8 effectiveness reduced by 50%. I think that's the anti-magic shells. So the team made anti-magic shells are a lot lower. So your team utility going down a bit. I think that's fair. I think Death Knight was already offering a lot of like team utility. Surprising, like this is the only nerf just to your dot damage. So you're likely still going to be decent, I would assume. The Hunt is getting a buff. The damage and damage over time effect are now only reduced by 15%. So a 13% increase, I think, which is probably what they needed to hit. I feel like Havoc just doesn't have any burst damage. I think that's okay. Now, Disintegrate for Evoker. So they buffed it up top for PvE, and here comes the nerf. Now it's a 10% nerf overall. Prez needed that. Dev needed that. So 10% nerf to Disintegrate. And then Living Flame is also getting a 20% nerf to its healing for Preservation. Honestly, probably could have nerfed the damage part of it too. So Prez definitely needed something. Little tweak here, but Eternity Surge went up as well for Dev, so it's probably still fine. BM Hunter needed some help. And in our predictions, what are they going to do? Just flat number buffs. Kill Command 15%, Cobra Shot 15%, Kill Shot 40%, and Barbed Shot 20%. Now that Kill Shot with Dark Ranger, when Kill Shot becomes like a shadow spell in 11.0.5 in the future, that could be very, very, very gnarly. Mistweaver, you guys are copping another Battleground nerf. Peace Weaver PvP talent now reduces the cooldown of Revival by 30 seconds down from 60. And Revival in PG is super annoying. So I'm not surprised to see this. I guess we're going to have to wait for the 11.0.5 kind of like rework touch-up to Mistweaver before we see it like really saved in Arena, because I think in Arena it's probably still going to struggle. For Windwalker, Communion with the wind damage increase is no longer reduced in PvP combat. It was reduced by 50%. I mean, real, I don't know what that is, but it's 50% increase to whatever it is. So let us know in the comments down below for Windwalker. That's a big deal. However, Shadow Pan is getting a 50% nerf, which is Wisdom of the Wall shadow damage is reduced by 50%. Windwalker was a really sleeper spec, but I was surprised it got hit so hard and we didn't see Mage, right? Because Mage comes before Monk. We didn't see Frost Mage, and Windwalker got hit before Frost Mage. That seems pretty strange to me. I don't think Frost Mage is the case of popularity. It's definitely really good. Holy Paladin, you're getting buffs. They're making you tankier. You might not die. Sanctified Plates is giving you 20% armor and 10% stamina, and area of effect damage reduction by 6%. And your wall, your shield wall, is getting a 50% increase, so maybe people won't ignore it and just kill you anyways. I think that's pretty good for Holy Paladins. That's a nice little touch up. And you're getting the semi rework in the future of 11.0.5. For Prop Paladins, they're also getting this. Why? I guess they're trying to make them a viable flag carrier maybe in BGs. That's the only thing I can think. I don't see them popping up in arenas to be a problem there, so this is probably fine if it's just aimed at BGs. Rogue reverberation damage bonus for Echoing Reprimand reduced to 70% PB combat, down from 100. I saw some people saying that they were practicing the Rogue one shot. Now this got nerfed and that's totally ruined. I don't know if they'll have a different build for this specifically. And Echoing Reprimand is completely changing anyways in 11.0.5. I think it's like a passive or something like that. So Sub Rogue definitely, I think, needed a little bit of something looked at it, and this is probably the right way to go about it. It's cheesy one-shots, get rid of those. Enhanced Shamans, what is that? Another essay for you guys. Who is Blizzard's little love child right now? Storm Strike, 20% damage. Wind Strike, 20% damage. Ice Strike, 40% damage. Frost Shock, 40% damage. Fire Nova, I don't know about that one, 40% damage increase. Lava Lash, 20% increase. Okay. Enhance is getting some love even before the 11.0.5 rework. And now Warlock, Aflock. Okay, you guys aren't escaping untouched. Corruption damage reduced by 10%. Shadow Bolt damage reduced by 15%. But your Unstable Affliction damage is going up by 30%. And Unstable Affliction backlash damage from Dispelling it is going up. So trying to take some of the damage into your casted spells rather than your instant. I think that's fair. Hellcaller also received a nerf with Wither at 10%. So I don't know if this is a 2-tap, like Corruption and Wither nerfed that 20 on top of that. And also Soul Harvest is going to nerf Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul by only increasing by 10 down from 20. So 10% nerf here as well. So like 15 plus 10, whatever that math is, because it's not additive because it's a percent. And then the 10 plus 10, but UA. So a little bit of an exchange. I think that's the right direction. Take some damage out of the instance, reward some of the casted spells. And Destro, you guys are falling off a cliff as far as like being noticed, but here we are. Chaos Bolt, 15% damage increase. Incinerate, 15% damage increase. Soulfire, 15% damage increase. Decimation now reduces the cooldown. Cast time of Soulfire by 60, down from 80. It was pretty much instant cast, so I think it's still going to be pretty close to instant cast even with that. Hellcaller, Wither damage, though, reduced by 30%. So again, reducing some of the instant damage, trying to buff some of the casted spells. Ruination for Daedalus getting buffed by 15%. This is another one that was really cool. Big animation, Infernal Rock from the Sky, and then just got nerfed big time in the beta. Destro just got owned in the beta because it looks so cool and so awesome, and now some of that's starting to get rewinded, so that's nice. Can't believe it that Frost Mage got through this round of changes. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it that Frost Mage got through this. And Prez Evoker, you know, it got through it in a pretty decent spot. I think Disc Priest was fine. I honestly am okay with the Disc Priest meta. I feel like it doesn't happen very often, and it's the most popular healer by far. So if we get people playing healer and that's the most popular, we get more people playing healer. Obviously, I would have liked to see maybe a couple more buffs. Like Holy Priest got completely ignored. Holy Paladin buffs seem decent though for them specifically. Bring Holy Priest up a little bit more so he can have more healers, because that's going to be what's determining the queue times. But a decent set of changes for this round of updates. And as always, if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated.